The following paid program is furnished by the Coalition. It's for basic entertainment and informational purposes only and is solely responsible for its content. It does not necessarily reflect the views of Cumulus Media, its management, or its staff. AM 790 Talk and Business presents The Coalition, a weekly 1-hour show that looks at all sides of local, regional, and national news as well as current events. Join us now for The Coalition.
Host, AO Taxpayer. If you're listening for the first time on our new time slot on AM 790's new Sunday morning lineup, some special ground rules, and today, for our introductory Sunday morning class, a very special guest. The ground rules of the Coalition are very clear. We are an outrage porn-free zone. We will not tolerate conversation about gun raffles, Christmas trees, people's emotional responses. This ain't Oprah. It's a long-form conversation format. We sit with the guest is the star, the guest is the focus. We will not handicap elections. I'm not interested in our guest's fundraising efforts. I'm not interested in our guest's polling. I don't want to know if he or she will win. I want to know, well, why they should win. A compelling question here in Rhode Island as we enter the final stages of the silly season. So it brings me special joy to welcome our guest, Renaissance man, man about town, Robert Healy, the moderate party candidate for governor. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning.
Graduate of Rhode Island College, a hometown boy, Boston University, Northeastern University, New England School of Law. Did I miss anything?
I did my PhD work without dissertation at Columbia, and I studied at Tokyo University for international trade.
Really?
Yeah.
What did you do at Columbia? What type of work?
I was working on my PhD in comparative education, and I was actually getting ready. I was halfway through my dissertation, and I was taking the train to New York and opened up a copy of the New York Times and saw my advisor's picture in the obits.
Oh.
And it went downhill from there because they tried to switch me over for new dissertation advisors. It just didn't really work because I had already been halfway through with George Beraday, Dr. Beraday. And it just, they tried to switch my focus. My dissertation was the relation of Dewey's education concepts in Japan in the post-war age. And it just didn't work out. And I came back and practiced law.
Practice law. So you could be the education governor.
I could be the education governor, the business governor, the anti-tax governor. I can be them all. I mean, I've been around the track so many times. I know the game.
Well, you've got quite a storied past. I have to ask you the first and most important, probably the most important question of the entire show, and I want you to focus on this.
Sure.
As a committed bourbon drinker, is it Maker's Mark, Knob Creek, Blanton's, Woodford? What's your choice?
Well, I actually at home I do drink a lot of Bakers, and I have Maker's Mark. I enjoy a variety. I'm not a one bourbon man. And to be honest with you, I'll even drink just plain American whiskey. I'm good with rot gut. I really am. The only thing I can't do Scotch. For some reason, I can't get the peat flavored into me.
The whole chewing wood.
Yeah,
it just doesn't work.
Yeah,
doesn't work.
In the liquor business, we used to go to these tastings, and we'd have all these high-end scotches, and these are like hundreds of dollars a bottle,
right?
And I couldn't even taste them because it was just revolting to me. So I'm an American whiskey drinker. I drink bourbon preferably.
There you go. So you actually have spent the majority of your life in what we refer here on the show as the dreaded private sector.
Ah, unbelievable! Huh?
It's astonishing. You've actually had to make payroll.
Yes, I owned a restaurant. I owned a liquor business. We've owned several businesses. I own two right now. Both of them do not have employees right now. One will be hiring on, depending upon how we structure the company. I have a business partner, and we have to.
I know part of your focus, and we've discussed this, and I met you years ago, has been on Latin American wines. How did you discover that as a passion?
Well, I was in Peru in 1978. Stayed down there for a month or two, and I just had an affinity with the culture for some reason. And later on, I had a friend who had a place in Uruguay. Actually, it was a client at the time. It's a funny story, but it's too long to get into. But anyway, he invited me down to Uruguay. And when I was down in Uruguay, I found the culture very, very happy and joyous. And even though they had nothing, they were very happy. And there wasn't the violent crime down there. It was just a very nice society. And later, when I sold the business, I ended up legally taking the money and parking it in South America. And I bought property up and down in auctions because of the Argentine banking crisis. And so that's pretty much where that goes. And then I was in the wine business, and I'd go down and visit Mendoza and the wine regions, and it was nice.
And work with the CIA and getting your export licenses.
Yeah. Well, that's only if you go over to like Iguazu Falls or something like that. That's where all the gun trading and international rules are constantly broken.
Well, we prefer to feel that as an enterprise zone, Rhode Island style. Leads me to an important question. An article of faith, really amongst GOP voters in particular, or we'll call it the conservative right, is the whole notion that a businessman can run government like a business.
No.
Yet, well, let me ask you this. On a local level, take, for example, Don Carcieri. Spectacular failures. Typically, business leaders, from a top-down management perspective, all of a sudden run into the legislature, who don't have to follow orders.
Correct.
It isn't the military. And when they are given power, that's how you end up with 38 studios and Deepwater Wind. Your business background is very different, however. You have to, and as you just explained, you've worked internationally. You have to collaborate. You have to work with different cultures, different people, different backgrounds, different motivations.
Different mindsets.
Absolutely. How does that prepare you, I think, ideally, for a job like a governor in a state which is constitutionally weak?
Yes. Well, there are three issues you bring up that I'd love to comment on. First of all, I think that the role of any leader, I mean, I know not everybody, but most people who are running for office see leadership as a top-down structure. And I don't necessarily see that. I believe a good leader brings all the people to a point where they all have an agreement in terms of the culture and society, and therefore the leader is irrelevant or unimportant. I mean, there's a function for a leader, but I think everyone has to understand that they're individuals and they have rights and they have responsibilities in a culture. A leader can bring them, direct them, but people have to feel that they have some part in this process. And so I think that's a leadership style issue as opposed to going in and saying, okay, I'm the manager here and we're going to do this. And I mean, I don't have a problem with stating my views and making the arguments as clear as possible as to where I believe this should be or where I believe this should go. And as the person charged with leadership duty, I think my job is to show the options, direct people as to which option I think is the best, and let the people make determinations. Because, I mean, the government's power is, and I firmly believe this, government's power is only on loan from the people. It's not the government having power and then giving some to the people. It's just backwards, the way we think of how government operates. Going back to your other thing of managing a government like a business, it has there are some functions there. I mean, I'm a zero-based budget kind of guy, which is a business concept, but I also understand that it has to be tailored to the needs of a government. Now, you just can't operate government in the same way with a zero-based budget. There has to be modifications to that style. Okay, and they have to be reasonable. Think about it this way. I always go back to a line from Buddy Cianci, who would say, you can't operate a government like a business because when was the last time a business bought an elephant? You have government functions that are clearly different from the typical business structure. On the other hand, we also have a restrictive federal constitution, which we don't necessarily obey, and we have an expansive state constitution, which is a little more flexibility. But even that, I mean, I always question, why is the government involved in this unless there's a clear purpose for the people? And constitutionally based purpose on top.
The big issue clearly is the J word and the jobs word. the Republican nominee lays claim to creating 1,000 jobs while being mayor of one of our towns. And I find a not so subtle irony in that he also claims to be a conservative, and conservatives will tell you that government cannot create jobs. Does the government play any or what role?
The government has
job
to.
creation?
The government has to make sure that the playing field is level. I mean, it's pretty basic. You can't overregulate. You can't overtax. You need to create an environment which encourages business to come. You can give all phony money to people. Say, okay, we're going to give you a tax break. We do this in our state every day. We give tax breaks to certain companies and certain players. That means the state is in business with them. I mean, think of how it works with Twin Rivers. I mean, the smoking thing. It's a public health issue number one. We can't let people be exposed to smoke. But hey, in the casino where our dollars are really kind of jeopardized because we need it for tax revenue, the health of those people, we can let them go, or they're somehow immune from the concerns of smoking. So I think the hypocrisy that we have shown clearly demonstrates that we don't necessarily treat all businesses equally, and businesses recognize that. They'll come here. If you say, hey, we're going to give you, $200,000 in tax breaks, and we're going to give you this and that, they're going to come here. They're business people. They're going to come where the money is,
right.
But they're not going to stay. There's no reason for them. What you have to do is, think of the property tax situation. If you could find the method, and that's what we're proposing, a statewide teacher contract where it's funded by the income tax or other operating revenue from the budget, I'll be willing to consider that. But if you take away 50% of the property taxes in cities or towns, it looks better for a business to come in here because the burden is shifted away from using the business as the cash cow to using the employment that's being generated by the business as the cash cow.
Right. It's ironic that so much of our tax structure is based on penalizing the very nature of what makes business successful, specifically capital investment. Yeah. We, rather than giving, say, an investment tax credit, which would encourage people to bring hard assets into the state, we obsess over job training bills, which have, talk about bridges to nowhere.
Right.
We're training them for jobs that don't exist. Yet at the same time, we want to crucify the very people that we need here, which is basic distribution and basic manufacturing.
Well, it's easy to divide a society. It's hard to bring a society together. That's really the issue. I know I heard you say we're not going to talk about campaign finances, but campaign finances generally are done in a way that separates a society. If you say you believe in, take an issue, one side is going to be X and the other side is going to be Y. In order to propel themselves into office, they're going to take contributions from people that support X or support Y. And by doing so, they're going to continually polarize the society. They're not going to look for solutions. They're just going to look for what issues they can sell to those people so they can get more money for their campaigns. And by doing that, you've constantly, created a stronger and stronger divide. I'm going to get in office and protect your interests on X. No, I'm going to get in office and protect your interests on Y. But I need your help. I need your money. And by doing that, people say, oh, wow, if I give to this, and they're committed to a cause, obviously. But the real idea is that if we really want to find solutions to problems, this really a solution lies in black or white. It lies in the gray in the middle. And if you really want to solve problems and you really want to bring society together, what you have to do is take the best from both worlds and try and craft a solution from them. To keep using money in politics to polarize society is to our own detriment. We're shooting ourselves in the foot, and that's where Rhode Island keeps going.
Well, the polemic clearly here hasn't worked. To me, one of the more appalling developments in this current political generation, I'll call it, is the notion that Wall Street, which, the business of Wall Street had always been quote unquote Main Street. So at least theoretically, you could convince yourself into thinking that big Wall Street supported business, which ultimately would support job creation. Now you've had big Wall Street evolve more to, okay, on one hand, if the alleged and crony capitalistic Republican conservative gets in, we can then play to what Chamber of Commerce solutions we could have. On the other hand, if the Alinsky light left leftist gets in, we will actually work aggressively to build our business model to support the type of social engineering that is now their trademark or hallmark. How much money, even though theoretically